The green-eyed woman standing at the edge of Georgetown, Colorado in 1878, knew that whispers followed her like shadows. And today, those whispers had turned dangerous. Katherine Brennan clutched her leather satchel filled with dried herbs and roots as she watched three men approach her small cabin with torches held high against the twilight sky. She had saved their children from fever just 2 months ago, but fear had shorter memories than gratitude when people saw things they could not understand. Witch, they called her, though she had never claimed anything beyond what her grandmother taught her in the Tennessee hills before consumption took her. The plants spoke their own language if you listened close enough, showed you their secrets in the curve of a leaf or the bitter taste of bark. But in Georgetown, where silver mines brought fortune seekers and desperate men, where the altitude made every breath a prayer, knowledge looked like magic to those who preferred ignorance. Katherine had learned to read the mountain flora the way other women read recipe books. She knew which moss grew only on the north side of aspens, which roots would draw poison from infected wounds, which flowers steeped in hot water could ease a laboring mother's pain. Her shelves held jars of dried yarrow and willow bark, packets of wild sage and evening primrose, bundles of columbine and kinnikinick berries. Every remedy had been tested, every preparation measured and recorded in the journal she kept by candlelight. The men never reached her door. A tall figure on a bay horse materialized from the pine trees that surrounded her property, his hand resting easy on the revolver at his hip. His voice carried authority without needing volume. "Evening, gentlemen. Think you took a wrong turn. Town's back that way." Lucas Yates had arrived in Georgetown 3 weeks earlier, a cowboy from Montana Territory looking for work after a harsh winter killed half his employer's herd. He found employment at the Riverside Ranch 5 miles outside town, breaking horses and mending fences, but he spent his free time riding the mountain trails, learning the terrain. His weathered face showed 30 years of sun and wind, his hands were calloused from rope and leather, and his pale blue eyes missed nothing. "This does not concern you, stranger," the largest of the 3 men said, though his torch lowered slightly. "That woman has unnatural ways." "Unnatural like knowing how to heal your boy when Doc Patterson said he would not make it." Lucas dismounted slowly, keeping his horse between himself and the men. "Heard about that. Heard she asked for nothing in return either. Seems the only unnatural thing here is you showing up with fire and bad intentions." Katherine stood frozen in her doorway, moonlight catching the auburn braid that fell over her shoulder. She had not asked for protection, had not expected it. Most people kept their distance, grateful but wary, taking her remedies in darkness and pretending not to know her in daylight. This cowboy with trail dust on his jacket and conviction in his stance was offering something different. The standoff lasted 3 heartbeats before the men retreated, muttering threats that dissipated like smoke in the mountain air. Lucas waited until they disappeared down the rocky path before turning to Katherine. "Madam, might want to consider keeping a rifle by your door. Not everyone scares off that easy. I do not believe in solving problems with bullets." Her voice held the soft vowels of the South, though she tried to flatten them. "Thank you for your help, Mr. Lucas Yates, and what do you believe in, if you do not mind my asking?" She studied him carefully, looking for mockery or fear in his expression. Finding neither, she opened her door wider. "I believe in things that grow. Would you like some coffee? Least I can do after you rode to my defense." The cabin's interior surprised him. He had expected something dark and cluttered, matching the rumors that swirled through Georgetown's saloons. Instead, he found order and light. Dried plants hung from ceiling beams in neat rows, each bundle labeled in careful handwriting. Shelves lined one wall, holding jars and tins organized by size and purpose. A worn medical text lay open on a small table beside a notebook, filled with detailed sketches of leaves and flowers. The room smelled of sage and something sweeter he could not identify. "People fear you," Lucas said, accepting the tin cup she offered. The coffee was strong and good, flavored with something that made it taste almost medicinal. "People fear what they do not understand." Katherine sat across from him, her hands wrapped around her own cup. "My grandmother was a healer. She learned from her mother, who learned from hers. We remember what doctors forget, that everything we need grows from the earth if we know where to look and how to ask. Nothing scary about that." He sipped the coffee, feeling warmth spread through his chest. "What did you put in this?" "Chicory root and a touch of wild mint. The altitude here makes regular coffee sit heavy on the stomach." She allowed herself a small smile. "See, already you think I poisoned you. I think you made the best coffee I have tasted in 6 months." Lucas set down his cup. "Those men will come back. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but fear like that does not just disappear. You need someone watching your back. And you are volunteering." Katherine raised an eyebrow. "You do not even know me." "Know enough. You helped a sick child. You live alone in the mountains with nothing but plants and books for company. You make excellent coffee." He stood, his frame filling the small space. "I work at Riverside Ranch, close enough to check on you regular if you will allow it." She wanted to refuse, to insist on her independence as she always had. But something in Lucas Yates's steady gaze made her reconsider. He did not look at her dried herbs with suspicion or cross himself when she mentioned her grandmother's teachings. His interest seemed genuine, unmarked by fear or judgment. "I suppose that would be acceptable," she said finally. "Though I warn you, association with me will not make you popular in town. Never been much for popularity contests." Lucas moved toward the door, then paused. "That notebook there, the one with all the drawings. You make those?" "Every plant I use I document. Appearance, location, properties, dosage. My grandmother could not read or write, so she kept everything in her memory. I decided to make a record." Katherine picked up the leather-bound journal. "Most people think it is nonsense. Most people are fools." He tipped his hat. "I will be back tomorrow evening, Miss Brennan. Lock your door tonight." After he left, Katherine stood at her window watching his silhouette disappear into the darkness. Something had shifted in the mountain air, some change she could not name but felt as surely as approaching weather. She touched the glass, still warm from the day's sun, and wondered if maybe she had been alone too long. Lucas kept his word. The next evening he appeared with 2 rabbits he had trapped, cleaned and ready for cooking. Katherine showed him how to prepare them with wild onions and herbs she gathered from the creek bed. They ate together as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of copper and gold. "Tell me about Montana," she said, watching him eat with the efficient movements of a man accustomed to trail meals. "Not much to tell. Worked for the same outfit since I was 18. Good people, fair wages. But after that winter they could not keep everyone on. Told us to find work elsewhere until spring." He leaned back in his chair. "Your turn. How does a woman from Tennessee end up in a Colorado mining town?" Katherine's expression clouded. "My father was a miner, heard about the silver strikes and decided we were moving west when I was 16. My mother died on the journey, cholera. My father made it 2 years before the mines took him, same as they take everyone eventually. Collapsed tunnel. And you stayed. Where else would I go? I had this cabin, my grandmother's knowledge, and people who needed healing even if they would not admit it." She stood to clear the plates. "I thought about leaving after the first time they called me a witch. That was 4 years ago, but running never solved anything. Lucas watched her move around the small kitchen, noting the grace in her movements, the strength in her shoulders. She wore a simple brown dress that had been mended multiple times, and her hands bore small cuts from gathering plants in rough terrain. Everything about her spoke of resilience and quiet determination. "Would you teach me?" he asked suddenly. "About the plants, I mean. Never had much schooling, but I can learn if someone has patience." Katherine turned, surprise evident on her face. "You want to learn plant medicine? Want to understand what makes people so afraid? Figure the best way to do that is to see it for myself." He met her gaze directly. "Besides, seems like useful knowledge for a man who spends most of his time alone in the wilderness." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Tomorrow is Sunday. I usually spend the afternoon gathering. You can come with me if you are serious." "I am serious." The next day dawned clear and cold, frost sparkling on the grass like scattered diamonds. Lucas arrived at mid-morning to find Katherine already prepared, her leather satchel over one shoulder and a walking stick in her hand. She wore practical boots and a heavy shawl, her hair braided tight against the wind. They walked into the high country, following game trails through stands of pine and aspen. Katherine moved with confidence, reading the landscape like Lucas read cattle trails. She stopped frequently, kneeling to examine plants that grew close to the ground or reaching up to touch leaves on low branches. "Yarrow," she said, pointing to a cluster of white flowers. "Good for stopping bleeding. You crush the leaves and apply them directly to wounds. Dried, you can make a tea that helps with fever." She carefully harvested several stalks, leaving the roots intact. "Always take only what you need and never more than half of what you find. The plants need to survive to grow again." Lucas watched her hands, noting how gently she handled each specimen. "Your grandmother taught you that." "She taught me to respect the plants, that they are gifts, not commodities. She said the earth provides for those who listen." Katherine moved to another cluster, this one with narrow leaves and small purple flowers. Echinacea strengthens the body's ability to fight illness, especially useful before winter when people get sick easily. They spent hours in the meadows and forests, Katherine pointing out plants and explaining their uses while Lucas listened and occasionally asked questions. He had a quick mind and good memory, repeating back what she told him without needing reminders. When they stopped to rest beside a creek, eating the bread and cheese Katherine had packed, he asked the question that had been building all morning. "Why do they fear you? I have been watching how you work, and there is nothing dark about it. You are just using what grows naturally." Katherine pulled her shawl tighter, though the sun was warm on their faces. "Because I am a woman alone with knowledge they do not possess. Because sometimes my remedies work when Doc Patterson's do not, and that makes them uncomfortable. Because people would rather believe in evil magic than accept that maybe the answer to their problems grows in their own backyard." She looked at him. "Do you know what the worst part is? Half the time they come to me in secret, begging for help after the doctor fails. Then they pretend they never spoke to me when they see me in town. That is not fear, that is cowardice." Lucas skipped a stone across the creek. "My mother knew some plant lore, nothing like yours, but enough to help when we were far from any doctor. She used to say that women carried the old knowledge in their bones, passed it down like recipes and stories. Your mother sounds wise. She was. Died bringing my sister into the world when I was 12. Baby died too." He said it matter-of-factly, but Katherine heard the grief underneath. "Always wondered if someone like your grandmother could have saved them. Maybe, maybe not. Plant knowledge is not miracle work, Lucas. I have failed more times than I want to count. Lost children to diphtheria, mothers to childbirth fever, men to infections that spread too fast for any remedy to catch. Her voice dropped. That is another reason they fear me. When I cannot save someone, they wonder if maybe I chose not to. That is the stupidest thing I ever heard. Despite herself, Katherine laughed. Stupid or not, it is how they think. They walked back as afternoon shadows lengthened, their satchels full of carefully harvested plants. Lucas helped her hang the fresh bundles in her cabin, following her precise instructions about spacing and air flow. She made more of the chicory coffee, and they sat at her small table while she showed him how to press flowers for preservation. "You have a gift for this," Katherine said, watching him carefully arrange a columbine blossom. "Most people rush it. Most people do not take time to do anything properly." He adjusted the flower slightly. "I was thinking, might be good if you taught some other folks in town. Not the men who came with torches, but maybe some of the women, the ones who might be interested in learning. They would never come. It would be social suicide to associate with me openly. What if we made it something different? Not healing or medicine, just plants. Natural history like those books back east write about. Make it respectable." Lucas looked up from his work. "I met a woman at the ranch, Sarah Colton. Her husband owns it. She seems decent, not superstitious. Maybe she would come, and if she does, others might follow." Katherine wanted to dismiss the idea, but something about his enthusiasm made her consider it. "You really think people would be interested?" "I think you are selling yourself short. And I think there are more good people in Georgetown than bad. They just need someone to show them it is safe to be curious." Over the following weeks, Lucas became a regular presence at Katherine's cabin. He came after work, sometimes bringing meat or supplies from town, always staying to help with whatever tasks needed doing. He repaired her roof where it leaked, reinforced the door frame, split firewood for winter. In return, Katherine taught him about the plants, lending him books and letting him copy from her journal. The change in their relationship was gradual, marked by small moments rather than grand gestures. The evening, Lucas caught Katherine when she stumbled on a loose floorboard, his hands steadying her waist while her palms pressed against his chest. The morning, she met him on the trail during an early gathering trip, and he smiled at her in a way that made her forget what plant she had been searching for. The night, they stayed up talking until dawn, moving from plant medicine to childhood memories to dreams they had set aside. "I wanted to see the ocean," Katherine admitted, watching the candle burn low between them. "Read about it in books and always thought I would make it to California someday, watch the sun set over water instead of mountains. I wanted to own my own ranch," Lucas said. "Nothing fancy, just enough land for good grazing and a sturdy house, place where I could stay put instead of drifting." "Why did you not?" "Same reason most dreams do not happen. Life got in the way. Work took me one direction then another. Saved money, lost it, saved again. Eventually you realize you are living day to day, and the dreams stay dreams." Katherine reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. "Maybe dreams just change shape. Maybe they are still there, just waiting for the right moment." Lucas turned his hand over, palm up, and she placed hers against it. They sat like that, connected in the candlelight until he finally spoke. "Katherine Brennan, I think I am falling in love with you." She did not pull away. "I think I have already fallen." He stood, drawing her up with him, and kissed her with a tenderness that made her breath catch. His hands cradled her face like she was something precious, and she gripped his shirt, holding him close. When they finally separated, both were smiling. "This will make things harder," Katherine said. "The town already dislikes me if they know you are courting me. Let them talk. I have faced worse than gossip." Lucas pulled her back against his chest. "Besides, I have a plan." The plan involved Sarah Colton, as Lucas had suggested weeks earlier. He convinced the ranch owner's wife to visit Katherine under the pretense of learning about native plants for a garden she wanted to start. Sarah arrived on a Thursday afternoon, nervous but curious, and found Katherine's cabin far less intimidating than rumor suggested. "I expected something darker," Sarah admitted, looking around at the sunlit space. "More mysterious." "Most people do." Katherine poured tea, this time adding chamomile and honey. "I am just a woman who knows plants, nothing mysterious about it." They spent 2 hours discussing garden layouts and which species would thrive at Georgetown's elevation. Katherine gave Sarah cuttings and seeds, along with detailed instructions for planting and care. By the time Sarah left, she was laughing at something Katherine said about stubborn aspens, and her genuine smile suggested a friendship forming. Sarah returned the following week, bringing her friend Elizabeth Morgan. The week after that, 2 more women came. Within a month, Katherine had 6 regular visitors, women who came to learn about plants and stayed for tea and conversation. They started calling themselves the Natural History Society, lending respectability to what might otherwise be seen as suspicious gatherings. Lucas watched this unfold with satisfaction. "Told you it would work." "You were right," Katherine admitted. They were riding together in the high meadows, ostensibly looking for a particular type of mushroom but mostly enjoying the autumn afternoon. "I had forgotten what it was like to have women friends, to talk about ordinary things without watching for fear in their eyes. You deserve ordinary things. You deserve everything." He dismounted, helping her down from her horse. They had found a spot overlooking the valley. Georgetown spread below them like a child's toy town. "I have been thinking about something. Should I be worried?" "Probably." Lucas took her hands. "The job at Riverside Ranch ends in November. Winter work is scarce around here. I could head back to Montana, wait out the cold season, and come back in spring. Or," he paused, his expression serious, "or I could stay. Build a room onto your cabin, make it proper. Court you the right way with intentions." Katherine's heart raced. "What kind of intentions?" "The marrying kind. The building a life together kind. The facing whatever comes side by side kind." He pulled her closer. "I know it is fast. I know people will talk. But I also know that I have never met anyone like you, Katherine Brennan. You are strong and smart and kind, and you see the world in a way that makes me want to be better. So I am asking, would you consider letting me stay?" She kissed him instead of answering with words, pouring 4 years of loneliness and hope into the gesture. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "I will take that as a yes," Lucas said. "That is definitely a yes," Katherine laughed, the sound carrying across the valley. "Though I warn you, building onto the cabin before winter will be difficult. Then I better start immediately." They married in early November, a small ceremony performed by a traveling preacher passing through Georgetown on his circuit. Sarah and her husband stood as witnesses, along with 2 other women from the Natural History Society. Katherine wore a new dress made of deep green wool, and Lucas had his one good suit cleaned and pressed. They exchanged vows in Katherine's cabin, surrounded by the dried plants and books that represented her life's work. The wedding supper was simple, but joyful. Sarah brought a cake, Elizabeth contributed roasted chicken, and Lucas surprised everyone with a fiddle he had borrowed from the ranch. He played surprisingly well, and they danced in the small space between table and stove, laughing when they bumped into shelves and had to dodge hanging herbs. "I did not know you could play," Katherine said, spinning under his arm, full of surprises. He pulled her close for a slower dance. "Wait until you see what else I have been hiding." What he had been hiding was a talent for carpentry. Over the next few weeks, Lucas built a bedroom addition onto the cabin, complete with a real window and a door that closed properly. He worked before dawn and after dusk, determined to finish before the heavy snows came. Other men from the ranch helped occasionally, won over by Lucas's steady friendship and Katherine's grateful offers of healing remedies when they needed them. The addition was completed just as the first major storm hit, dumping 3 feet of snow across the mountains. Katherine and Lucas spent that first night in their new bedroom, listening to wind howl around the cabin while they lay warm under layers of quilts. "I have been thinking about what you said," Lucas murmured, his arm around her shoulders, "about wanting to see the ocean. That was just a dream." "This is better." Katherine pressed closer to his warmth. "What if you could have both? What if we spent next summer traveling to California, seeing what there is to see, and then came back here before winter?" He felt her tense with surprise. "I have been saving money for years, Katherine. Never had a reason to spend it. This seems like a good reason." "Lucas Yates, are you serious about everything involving you?" He kissed the top of her head. "We would need to find someone to watch the cabin, and you would have to prepare enough remedies to leave with folks who might need them." "But it could work. A wedding trip just delayed a few months." Katherine turned to face him in the darkness. "You would do that, take me to see the ocean." "I would do anything to make you happy. Besides, I want to see it too. Always have. Difference is now I have someone to see it with." They spent the winter planning and preparing. Katherine taught Sarah and Elizabeth more advanced plant knowledge, making sure someone could provide basic care if needed during their absence. She prepared jars of common remedies, labeling each carefully and writing out instructions. She also continued her journal, adding new observations and sketches by lamplight while Lucas read aloud from the books she owned. The Natural History Society continued meeting weekly, though sometimes snow made travel impossible and they had to skip sessions. During those weeks, Katherine and Lucas existed in a cocoon of domestic contentment, cooking together, working on separate projects in companionable silence, making love in their warm bedroom while storms raged outside. "I never thought I could be this happy," Katherine said one evening in February, watching Lucas repair a bridle by the fire. "I had accepted that I would always be alone, always feared. You were never someone to fear. They just needed time to learn that." He set down his work. "Sarah told me 3 women asked her about joining the society, women who would not have given you the time of day 6 months ago. Because you made it respectable, because you showed them it was safe, because you are remarkable, and eventually people notice remarkable things." He moved to sit beside her on the floor, both of them leaning against the bed frame. "Do you ever regret it, staying here after your father died? You could have gone anywhere." Katherine considered the question. "I regret being lonely. I regret the years of watching my back and wondering if someone would eventually do more than just threaten. But I do not regret the work itself. Every person I helped, every child who lived because I knew which plants to use, that mattered. That was worth staying for. And now I have you. Now I have friends. Now I have a future that looks different than I imagined, but better." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Now I am grateful I stayed, because if I had left, I would never have met a stubborn cowboy who decided to defend me against men with torches. Best decision I ever made." Lucas wrapped his arm around her. "That and learning to make your chicory coffee changed my whole life." Spring came late to the mountains that year, snow lingering until May. But when the trails finally cleared and the meadows burst into bloom, Katherine and Lucas prepared for their journey. They packed carefully, taking only what they could carry comfortably on horseback. Katherine brought her journal and a small press for collecting plant specimens. Lucas brought his rifle, extra ammunition, and the money he had saved over 12 years of steady work. They left on a morning when the sky was so blue it hurt to look at. Georgetown spread below them one last time as they climbed the pass heading west. Sarah and the other women had thrown them a farewell party the night before, giving them packages of food and small gifts for the journey. Katherine had cried, overwhelmed by the change from 4 years of isolation to a community that would miss her. The trip took 6 weeks, following established trails through Nevada and into California. They camped under stars, stayed in small-town boarding houses, and once spent 3 days waiting out a desert sandstorm in an abandoned line shack. Katherine documented plants she had never seen before, species that thrived in climates completely different from Colorado's mountains. Lucas worked occasional odd jobs when they passed through towns, earning extra money and trading stories with other travelers. They reached the Pacific Ocean on a June morning, cresting a hill to see the endless blue expanse stretching to the horizon. Katherine dismounted before her horse fully stopped, walking to the edge of the beach like someone in a trance. Lucas followed more slowly, letting her have the moment. "It is bigger than I imagined," she whispered, watching waves crash against dark rocks. "The books did not do it justice." "No book could." Lucas took her hand. "Come on." They spent the day exploring the tide pools, finding creatures Katherine had only read about. She collected samples of seaweed and coastal plants, pressing them carefully and making notes about their characteristics. Lucas watched her work with the same focused intensity she brought to everything, thinking how lucky he was to witness her joy. That night, they stayed in a small hotel in a fishing village, their room overlooking the water. They made love to the sound of waves, slower and more tender than usual, marking the significance of the moment. Afterwards, Katherine stood at the window wrapped in a sheet, watching moonlight paint silver paths across the ocean's surface. "Thank you," she said quietly. Lucas joined her at the window, his arms circling her waist from behind. "For what? For this. For believing in me when no one else did. For defending me, for learning from me, for loving me exactly as I am." She turned in his embrace. "For showing me that dreams can come true if you find the right person to share them with. Katherine Yates, I would give you the world if I could. The ocean is just a start." He kissed her forehead. "Ready to go home, more than ready." The journey back was easier, their horses familiar with the trail and the weather cooperating. They reached Georgetown in mid-August to find the town preparing for the annual Harvest Festival. Sarah met them on the road, embracing Katherine like a sister and demanding to hear every detail of their adventure. The cabin was exactly as they left it, though someone had clearly been maintaining the property. Fresh vegetables grew in a small garden Katherine had not planted, and the woodshed was stocked with split logs. A note on the table explained that the women of the Natural History Society had taken turns checking on the place, wanting everything perfect for their return. "I told you," Lucas said, reading over Katherine's shoulder. "Good people, just needed a chance to show it." They settled back into their life with comfortable ease. Lucas returned to work at the ranch, and Katherine resumed her plant gathering and healing work. The Natural History Society grew to include 12 regular members, meeting every Saturday afternoon. Some women came purely for botanical knowledge, others learned enough to provide basic remedies for their families. All of them treated Katherine with respect and genuine friendship. The change in town attitude was gradual but unmistakable. People still whispered, but now the whispers carried curiosity rather than fear. Men tipped their hats when Katherine passed instead of crossing the street to avoid her. Doc Patterson even consulted with her twice, asking about plant remedies for conditions he found difficult to treat. It was not universal acceptance, but it was progress. Winter arrived again, and with it came a new challenge. Katherine woke one December morning feeling ill, though not in any way her plant knowledge could address. After 3 days of persistent nausea, Sarah visited and took one look at her before laughing. "You are pregnant, you fool. Can you really not tell?" Katherine sat down hard on the nearest chair. "I am. Are you certain? Had 3 children myself, I know the signs." Sarah poured her some ginger tea. "Does Lucas know? I have to be sure first, I have to." Katherine pressed her hands to her flat stomach. "A baby I had not even considered." Lucas noticed something was different the moment he came home that evening. Katherine kept watching him with an expression he could not read, and she barely touched her supper. Finally, as they prepared for bed, she caught his hand. "I have something to tell you, and I am not sure how you will feel about it." His expression shifted to concern. "Are you all right? Is something wrong?" "Nothing is wrong. At least, I do not think anything is wrong. I think, Lucas, I am fairly certain I am pregnant." He stared at her for 3 full seconds before his face split into the widest smile she had ever seen. Then he was lifting her, spinning her carefully, laughing with pure joy. "Are you serious? We are having a baby, seems that way." Katherine laughed too, relieved by his reaction. "You are happy." "Happy does not begin to cover it." He set her down gently, his hands on her waist. "A baby, our baby. Katherine, this is." He kissed her instead of finishing the sentence. They told Sarah first, then the other women in the society, swearing them to secrecy until Katherine was further along. But in a town the size of Georgetown, secrets never lasted long. By February, everyone knew that the plant woman and her cowboy husband were expecting a child. The reaction surprised them both. Women Katherine barely knew stopped by with baby clothes and advice. The ranch hands built a cradle, competing to make it perfect. Even Doc Patterson visited, offering awkwardly to assist with the delivery if needed. Katherine graciously declined, explaining that Sarah and Elizabeth would help her, both experienced mothers who knew what to expect. "They are trying to make up for how they treated you before," Lucas observed, watching Katherine fold yet another donated blanket. "I know. Part of me wants to be angry about it, to point out that they should have been kind from the beginning. But another part is just grateful they are trying now." She placed the blanket in the cradle. "Our child will grow up differently than I did. They will have a community, people who care. That matters more than holding grudges." The baby came in late June, a boy born during the longest day of the year. The labor was hard but uncomplicated, Katherine using her own plant knowledge to manage the pain, while Sarah and Elizabeth coached her through each contraction. Lucas waited outside the bedroom, pacing like a caged animal until Sarah finally called him in to meet his son. "He is perfect," Lucas whispered, staring at the tiny bundle in Katherine's arms. "Look at all that dark hair. He has your chin." Katherine was exhausted but glowing. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names for weeks, finally settling on James after Lucas's father. James Theodore Yates, born June 21, 1880, weighing 7 pounds and already demonstrating impressive lungs. Lucas held his son with the same care he showed handling newborn foals, terrified and awed in equal measure. The town celebrated with them. Gifts arrived daily, along with visitors wanting to see the baby. Katherine held court from her bed for the first week, too tired to care about propriety. Lucas barely left her side, helping with everything from changing diapers to preparing meals, learning infant care with the same focus he brought to everything. As summer faded into fall, they adjusted to life as parents. Katherine strapped James to her chest while gathering plants, introducing him early to the forests and meadows that sustained them. Lucas sang to him in the evenings, teaching him cowboy songs and nonsense rhymes. The baby thrived, growing strong and healthy. his dark eyes tracking everything with serious interest. On James's first birthday, the Natural History Society threw a party that turned into a town-wide celebration. The Riverside Ranch donated a pig for roasting. Women brought cakes and pies, and someone produced a jug of whiskey that got passed around the men. Children played tag between the cabins while adults talked and laughed, the afternoon stretching into evening. "This is what I hoped for," Katherine told Lucas, watching their son toddle between Sarah's daughters while multiple adults kept watch. "Not just acceptance, but belonging, true community. You built this." Lucas kissed her temple. "You and your knowledge and your refusal to give up. I just helped people see what was there all along. We built it together." She leaned against him. "Everything good in my life now we built together." The years that followed were busy and full. Katherine continued her plant work, training several women in basic herbal medicine and creating a lending library of her botanical journals so others could learn. Lucas took over as foreman at the Riverside Ranch when the previous one retired, a promotion that came with better pay and a small house they chose not to move into, preferring their cabin with its memories and character. James grew into a curious, energetic boy who knew the names of 50 plants before he could write his own name. When he was 4, Katherine became pregnant again, this time with a daughter they named Rose Marie. 2 years after that came another boy, Henry. The cabin expanded twice more, growing into a sprawling but comfortable home filled with children's laughter and the ever-present smell of drying herbs. The town grew too. More families arrived, drawn by silver strikes and the promise of prosperity. Georgetown boomed, gaining a proper school and a second church. Through it all, Katherine remained a constant presence, the plant woman who helped when doctors could not, who taught anyone willing to learn, whose children played freely with others, and whose husband commanded respect throughout the valley. On their 10th anniversary, Lucas took Katherine back to the spot where he first proposed staying, the overlook above Georgetown where they had kissed and planned their future. The town looked different now, larger and busier, but the mountains remained unchanged. "You remember what you said?" Lucas asked, his arm around her waist. "About dreams changing shape. I remember everything about that day. I have been thinking we are due for another dream, something new to work toward." He turned her to face him. "What do you think about writing a book? Proper publication, your plant knowledge organized for anyone to use. We could work on it together, me helping with the writing while you provide the expertise." Katherine's breath caught. A book? Lucas, who would publish something written by a woman known as the town witch. Someone who recognizes value when they see it. And you are not the town witch anymore, Katherine. You are the town healer, the teacher, the expert everyone consults. Times are changing. Women are writing books now, getting recognized for their knowledge. He squeezed her hands. "Your journals are too valuable to sit on a shelf. Other people could benefit from what you know. It would take years. We have years. We have the rest of our lives." Lucas smiled. "What do you say? Ready for another adventure?" She kissed him, tasting promise and possibility. "With you. Always." They spent the next 3 years working on the book during winter evenings and Sunday afternoons. Lucas's neat handwriting transformed Katherine's technical notes into readable text, while she organized decades of knowledge into logical chapters. They debated phrasing and organization, tested remedies again to verify dosages, and drew careful illustrations of each plant discussed. The children helped in their own ways. James, now 12, contributed drawings that were remarkably accurate. Rose collected specimens for her mother to study. Henry, at 6, mostly got in the way but made them laugh, which was its own contribution. In the spring of 1892, They sent the completed manuscript to 3 different publishers in Denver and San Francisco. 2 rejections came back within weeks, polite but firm in their assertion that plant medicine guides were not commercially viable. The 3rd publisher, a small operation run by a forward-thinking woman named Margaret Chen, wrote back with an offer that made Katherine cry. "She wants it," Katherine said, reading the letter for the 4th time. "She wants to publish it, Lucas. She says it is exactly the kind of practical knowledge modern women need." The book appeared 6 months later, bound in green cloth with Katherine's pressed columbine specimen embossed on the cover. The title read, "The Mountain Healer's Guide, Plant Medicine of the Colorado Rockies" by Katherine Brennan Yates. Lucas insisted her full name be included, arguing that she had earned recognition under both her given name and married name. The first printing sold out within 2 months. Margaret wrote requesting permission for a second, larger run, and asking if Katherine would consider writing a follow-up focused on California coastal plants. The book found its way into women's hands across the West, carried by travelers, and recommended by doctors who recognized its value. Letters arrived at the Georgetown post office addressed simply to the plant woman, people sharing their success stories and asking questions about regional variations. "You are famous," Lucas teased, watching Katherine read through another stack of correspondence. "I am documented," she corrected. "There is a difference. Famous suggests something flashy and temporary. This is just knowledge preserved where it can help people. Either way, I am proud of you." He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "My wife, the author and healer, still scares people who do not know you, still impresses everyone who does." Katherine leaned back against his chest, thinking about how far they had come from that first night when he defended her with nothing but a horse and a quiet voice. She thought about the cabin that had grown into a home, the town that had transformed from hostile to welcoming, the family they had built together. She thought about her grandmother, who had given her knowledge without ever imagining how far it would reach. "I could not have done any of this without you," she said quietly. "We did it together. That is what marriage is, Katherine, building something neither person could build alone." He kissed her neck. "Though I will admit, you did most of the actual work. I just looked handsome and supportive." She laughed, the sound carrying through their home where 3 children played and herbs dried and books lined every available surface. "You did considerably more than that." Years continued to pass, marked by the rhythms of mountain life. Children grew and left, James taking a position with the Forestry Service, Rose marrying a teacher from Denver, Henry following his father into ranch work. Katherine and Lucas grew older together, their hair graying and their movements slower, but their bond remained as strong as ever. Katherine published 3 more books over the following decades, each one expanding on her knowledge and reaching new audiences. The Natural History Society became an official organization, meeting weekly even after Katherine's hands grew too arthritic to lead gatherings herself. She trained a successor, a young woman named Clara who had the same gentle approach to plants and people that Katherine had shown for 40 years. On their 40th anniversary, Lucas surprised Katherine with a trip back to California. They were both 60 now, not as spry as they had been during their first journey, but still capable of appreciating the ocean's majesty. They stayed for a month in the same fishing village, walking the beaches at sunset and collecting specimens for Katherine's final book, a comprehensive guide to coastal and mountain plants of the western United States. "I am tired," Katherine admitted one evening watching the sun sink into the Pacific. "Not unhappy, just tired. My body does not want to keep up with my mind anymore." Then we slow down. We have earned that right. Lucas held her hand, his grip still strong despite the passage of time. No more books unless you want to write them. No more teaching unless it brings you joy. We spent 40 years working, Catherine. Maybe it is time to just be. Just be, she repeated. I like the sound of that. They returned to Georgetown for the last time, settling into a comfortable retirement. Their children visited regularly, bringing grandchildren who listened wide-eyed to Catherine's stories about plants and healing. The town honored them both at the spring festival, presenting them with a plaque recognizing their contributions to the community. Doc Patterson, long retired himself, made a speech about how Catherine had taught him humility and the value of knowledge that came from sources beyond medical school. She scared me at first, he admitted, his voice wavering with age. Her certainty, her success where I had failed. But she never gloated, never made me feel small. She just shared what she knew and invited me to learn. That is the mark of true wisdom. Catherine cried through the whole ceremony, overwhelmed by the contrast between this celebration and those men with torches so many years ago. Lucas held her hand throughout, his presence as steady as it had been that first night. They had 5 more good years together before Lucas's heart began to fail. He went peacefully, surrounded by family in the bedroom he had built with his own hands. His last words were for Catherine, a whispered "I love you" that she carried with her through the grief that followed. The town mourned with her, understanding that Lucas Yates had been more than just a good man and a skilled foreman. He had been the person who saw value where others saw threat, who defended the defenseless and built bridges between fear and understanding. His funeral filled Georgetown's largest church, people standing in the aisles and spilling out into the street, all of them wanting to pay respects. Catherine lived another 7 years, spending her days in the cabin surrounded by memories and plants. She worked on one final book, a memoir about her life and the lessons she had learned. She wrote about her grandmother, her parents, the journey west, and the lonely years that followed. She wrote about Lucas with such love and detail that readers could almost see him, this cowboy who changed everything by simply believing in her. The book ended with advice for young women finding their own paths. Never let fear make you small. Never apologize for knowledge earned through hard work and careful study. The world will try to make you doubt yourself, to question whether you have the right to know things, to help people, to take up space. Ignore that voice. Instead, listen to the plants, to the earth, to your own inner wisdom. And when you are lucky, you will find someone who sees your strength and celebrates it rather than feeling threatened by it. That person is worth more than all the gold in all the mountains. Hold on to them, build a life with them, and know that together you can weather any storm. Katherine Brennan Yates died in her sleep on a spring morning in 1927, surrounded by the dried plants she had loved and the journals documenting 50 years of careful study. She was 70 years old, and she left behind 3 children, 8 grandchildren, 4 published books, and a legacy that extended far beyond the mountains of Georgetown, Colorado. The Natural History Society continued meeting for another 30 years. The cabin became a museum, preserved exactly as Catherine had left it. Her books remained in print, referenced by botanists and herbalists throughout the century. And in Georgetown, now a tourist town trading on its Silver Rush history, old-timers still told stories about the plant woman and her cowboy, how their love had transformed fear into understanding and isolation into community, proving that sometimes the most powerful medicine grows not from the earth, but from the simple act of believing in one another.